Okay, shalom everyone. I actually looked yesterday at the whole build-up of Peninei Halacha, and we actually went through all the real serious melachot that are common nowadays to be in the biblical sense. Even when we were learning, for example, about plowing, we said that most of us don't sow fields, etc. But there's so many other practical things like making holes in the ground and going with dragging a heavy furniture across ground as opposed to across a floor that's either with wood or with balatot. So this chapter 22, we talked of what's called Tzivyon Shabbat, the way to rest on Shabbat, even from things that are allowed according to the Torah, but the rabbis use that verse in Isaiah that we keep quoting. And so the chapter after this one is going to talk about Muktzah. So there's going to be, even today, some references to Muktzah, and so we'll discuss it more in a couple of weeks when we get to that chapter. Maybe even one, I think maybe the end of next week we should finish this chapter already. So we are in Halacha 13 of chapter 22. And just like the tractate of Shabbat, which has 25 chapters, one for each hour of Shabbat, Rabbi Melamed also divided his book to 25 chapters. So, Poskim disagree whether one may play games on Shabbat. So let's just use the word games in general, and then we'll get into details. Some say that since Shabbat is meant for Torah study, one may not play games, as that would be wasting time that could be used to study Torah. Accordingly, one may not play even checkers, chess, backgammon, billiards, or any ball game, whether the games are played inside on the floor or outside on a paved area. And since one may not play these games, according to this opinion, they are considered muktzah as well. So this is in the Birkei Yosef, which is one of the Achronim on the Shulchan Aruch, and that obviously is not our opinion, and generally speaking. But this is Rabbi Melamed usually brings the more machmir opinion first. So now the second opinion, what others maintain that there is no prohibition of playing games on Shabbat as long as nobody is playing for money. Indeed, some rabbis would play chess on Shabbat as it is a game that requires thought and sharpens the mind, and that's already in the Shiltei Giborim, one of the earlier Achronim. In practice, it is appropriate for adults to be stringent and not play ball games, chess, and the like, both because it is prohibited according to some poskim and because one should not get used to neglecting Torah study on Shabbat. So that's like almost like a compromise. Those who wish to be lenient have an opinion on which to rely, and he brings a whole list, the Shulchan Aruch, Magen Avraham, Kaf HaChaim. Children should also be trained to study Torah on Shabbat, but almost all poskim agree that one should not prevent them from playing games on Shabbat, as explained below. And so that will be in the chapter later. In contrast, sports that are a big deal, like soccer, basketball, baseball, and football, may not be played on Shabbat because of the prohibition on weekday activities. It goes without saying that one may not play them on the actual court or field designated for them, and even children may not play these sports either because it is a weekday activity. So even if there's no harisha, like we said about plowing, um, so this is a very, very general idea, and I'm sure that all of us have asked questions in the past. So I'm just going to give my own personal experience. Back to the idea of games and for adults as opposed to children. Children have what's called gil chinuch. So besides the idea of being bar mitzvah, where you actually change from being a child to being an adult, bar and bat mitzvah, you also have this earlier stage, which is called gil chinuch, which we already tried to explain to the children what certain values are, and we try to give them guidance in how to themselves grow and mature based on that. So if your 5-year-old daughter is playing with a doll, the Talmud actually doesn't talk about a daughter; they talk about a son who's carrying a stone in their hand in a place where there's no eruv. The Mishnah specifically says that notel adam et bno va'even biyado, that you are not obligated to make the child drop the stone before you go out in the public domain, but rather that is something that they hold on to, and that is their comfort, and therefore very, very deep psychology for those times, like what we call today a security blanket. Um, it is very appropriate to let them do it. But if a 10-year-old girl is walking with her doll on Shabbat where there's no eruv, I think that by that time the parents already have an idea of where they want to take her, and basically to say, it's not appropriate to go out with your doll in a place where no eruv. If you insist on taking the doll, then we're just not going to go wherever we were planning to go. And again, that's just from personal experience. And so our parents let us play all board games, even Monopoly. They finally agreed because the Shmirat Shabbat Gilchata, which is written here as SSK, Rav Neuvert said that as long as you don't say the word dollars or any other kind of real currency, it is allowed to play it for fun. I don't remember at what age specifically I stopped playing Monopoly, but we called it Donald Ducks. So, which sounds so much like dollars, but that's okay. And we played Risk, and we played Stratego, which is not mentioned here, and other games. My mother and grandmother always played backgammon on Shabbat. We played card games that, again, weren't for money. If it was a card game that you needed to keep points, we would take a novel that had so like Gin Rummy is 500 points, I think. So we would take a novel that had 500 pages and basically or two. That way, one team and the other team, and that way we would keep score. Because that way you know for sure that you're not going to write down the score, and it's not going to lead you. So again, it depends on the family, it depends on the situation, it depends on what is the common practice for Orthodox Jews to do on Shabbat. And so I think even in some Yeshuvim, they allow kids to play like fun soccer, not the real thing, on a pavement. But I think that most places do not have such public activities like that. But in the house, I think since people know what is mukta and what is not, and we'll learn about it more. Like I said, hopefully in a week and a half, then I think that is what's appropriate to explain and to basically work together. And just before the class, we were talking about the class of Rabbi Dr. Shaul from last night, um, and yes, we should have zeal to keep the mitzvot and to learn Torah, but we also have to give time to our family and children and friends. And so I think that is a true balance, and I'm glad that we could discuss that. So we'll stop here and we'll open up for questions.